Hey everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of Sports Speak. I'm Eddie Kalegi. Tim Moore will be here in a bit. We've got Zoe Alter here to talk all things NFL and the Mets because Steve Cohen officially bought the team today and just in the last few minutes has fired Brody Van Wagenen and basically the whole staff, which is kind of cool. So let's start right there because we knew Steve Cohen was going to make big moves. The big question was mainly focused on who is he going to sign in the offseason. But people kind of forgot about the fact that he's going to bring in his own people to run things. And not just Brody, but the whole staff. Omar Minaya is gone as well. I mean, he's clearly taking control, and he's only had the team for about 2 hours.
I mean, yeah, but isn't that what we all wanted? Anything to
Yeah.
do with Wilpons, we said all Mets fans were like, fire the Wilpons, fire Brody, just fire everyone, get everyone out. And I think people, right, it's a little bit of a shock, right, because we're all still high off of getting him, and then he starts firing people, which I get is unsettling, but this is what we wanted all along. And it's a lot at one moment just because it's all happened just in the last, whenever, but it is going to be good. And I think the thing with Steve Cohen is the reason why all us Mets fans wanted him as the owner is because he has money and he's not afraid to spend it, right? The Wilpons wouldn't put money into this team. That was their issue. But Steve Cohen is going to put money into this team. And that's what I'm looking forward to because you know who he's going to bring in. He's going to bring in people who are going to go for those big players. And so I think you may see the Mets pick up someone huge because they're willing to go out and get those big players. Like Trevor Bauer, I know was on the list, or some players that are insane that are crazy money, but you may get. So personally, I really like it. I've been over the moon about Steve Cohen, even when we knew he was coming anyway, but when it was official, his statement this morning, and then seeing Brody gone, I've literally never been happier.
And, I was still hesitant to be excited until literally the Mets made the statement because we've seen things happen before that never actually went through. But the good thing also with Steve Cohen and this happening this offseason is because, circumstantially with the pandemic, there's a lot of teams who are not going to be able to spend as much as they would have in previous years. Also, the teams that were eliminated early in the postseason and didn't get that playoff revenue. And the Mets, on the other hand, are in a safe financial situation now with all this cash coming in. And with a big free agency with guys like George Springer out there, the Mets really need another outfielder. He would fit really well in. Obviously, JT Realmuto has been talked about since the first time he was a free agent. And with the Mets non-tendering all three of their catchers, they need catchers. Tomas Nido is the only one on the roster. So definitely a lot to be excited about there. Other baseball thing I just wanted to touch on, the Red Sox and Tigers clearly not fazed by past cheating scandals. The Red Sox bringing back Alex Cora, which is one thing. But the Tigers then bringing in A.J. Hinch. The Astros didn't want him back, and Hinch is going to Detroit. I mean, what do you make of that move?
Honestly, I love the game of baseball, and I know the sign thing was a huge thing. I will keep saying that always. But I really don't think that the Astros won the World Series because of that. And this is always my hot take. People always fight me for it. But it was a huge deal and it definitely changed the way things went, but I think they still would have won it. But that being said, obviously you cheated. It wasn't the right thing to do, but he's had a year off. He's had time to think about it. And all eyes are going to be on him on the two of them to not do it again. They're going to be all in, and the Astros are already so watched. So the Astros couldn't bring them back because everyone they're already getting so much hate. There was just no way they could have without literally collapsing, without the whole world turning on them. So, which everyone basically did. But I think because they both go to a different team, they both have a chance to reset and try again. I think it's actually going to work out okay because I know the MLB is going to be so laser focused on them that I don't think they could get away with any silly business.
Yeah, and the Tigers, well, let's just talk about Detroit here.
Oh my
I don't
God.
know how far they're even going at this point because it's Miguel Cabrera and a bunch of 24-year-olds you've never heard of. So, I mean, the thing that I noticed with Detroit is after how terrible things went when Brad Ausmus was the manager, they clearly want people with experience now. You saw it with Ron Gardenhire. Now they're bringing in Hinch, but that team is still far away, and they're nowhere close to Cleveland or Minnesota or the White Sox in the AL Central.
No amount of cheating could save them. It's not possible. So I think they're fine.
But with Boston, it's a little different because I know this was a down year, but there are rumors that they're going to be in on George Springer because the fan base isn't too happy with trading Mookie Betts away. And this team, I know they had a down year, but there was no Chris Sale. He was hurt. A lot of prospects were starting to come up. and started producing at the end of the 60-game season. And still with uncertainty with Toronto in terms of their pitching, Baltimore's still going to be bad, and questions about, can the Rays repeat this great season? Do you think Boston is going to be back to a competitive team next year?
Boston, in my opinion, is one of those teams that is always scary. And I know sometimes they're just whatever historically bad, but maybe it's because of I grew up during, the David Ortiz era and everything going on like that. But in my eyes, they're always scary. Even in the seasons where they aren't that good, they're going to come back in a couple years and be better. So, and I know some people don't think of them that way, and maybe that's just the way I see it because I'm all weirded out with like how I grew up watching them. But the way I see it is they're all so closely knit together. Like I just think the franchise as a whole that I think they're going to be fine. And I feel like the bonds are what gets you to the playoffs. And I don't know why, but every time I look at the Red Sox, I see such good chemistry. And they could bring in anyone, and they just form chemistry. And I think that's one of the things. So they can bring in whoever they want, but they're going to turn them into someone better. So yeah, I do think they could be dangerous.
So let's talk football a little bit. We're halfway through the season now. Before we get into anyone specifically, I want you to give me a team that has surprised you and a team that has disappointed you so far in the first half.
Okay. I mean, we talked about this last time I was on, but a team that I am so severely disappointed in is the Saints. I expected so much better, and I know the whole Michael Thomas thing, but I expected way better from them. And a team that I didn't expect this from, I kind of did, but I've really been impressed by the Titans. I know like they were supposed to be good anyway, but I've just been impressed by it's not just Derrick Henry. You used to look at that team and think it's just Derrick Henry, and it's not. And that's one of the biggest things that I think happened this year for them, was they were able to come together. Tannehill, I've never liked the guy that much, but he is able to do stuff down there and in Tennessee. And I think that was the main thing for me, seeing them come together and obviously incorporate Derrick Henry, but getting other people involved too. Corey Davis, Janu, like just everyone else around him I thought was really important.
Yeah, the thing with the Titans, though, I mean, they're not playing in a tough division by any standards. I'd argue that's the second easiest behind, of course, the NFC East. But, the Texans have been a mess this year and fired their coach. A team with Phillip Rivers and the Colts is not going to be better than mediocre. I know they had a good start to the year, but in the games they've actually played against tough teams, Phillip Rivers has struggled mightily. And Jacksonville, they're a mess right now. So the Titans, my concern with them is what are they going to do in the playoffs? Will they be able to repeat what they did last year? I don't know because, Lamar Jackson's going to be fired up because now people are starting to question him after 2 years of these embarrassing playoff.
That was the other team I was going to go with. If I didn't go Saints, I would have gone Ravens just because I think that was a lot to see. After that loss to the Chiefs, we've really seen them decline a little bit. And Lamar Jackson isn't the Lamar Jackson we're used to seeing. And it makes you wonder, is it a fluke? Because that's what everyone looked towards. After Patrick Mahomes had his crazy season and he came back and had another crazy season, people were like, okay, like this kid's for real. But we haven't seen that with Lamar just yet. We saw him have this ridiculous season and he's come back, but he's had a couple of games where he's looked really iffy. And even if he's still playing well, he's not playing at the MVP level he was last year. And I think that's the biggest thing for the Ravens, is bringing everyone together. Plus, they have a lot of injuries. So personally, I think if the Titans take advantage of the Ravens and the Ravens' injuries keep haunting them and Lamar doesn't step up and do something right now, I do think the Titans can beat the Ravens and go further in the playoffs.
And it's tough too, just because so many people started thinking because Lamar Jackson won the MVP that suddenly he was going to, take over Mahomes and become the best player in football. But my thing with Lamar, he does not have as strong of an arm as Mahomes. And he's a running quarterback, a mobile quarterback. No matter how good they are their first couple years, when they're 29, 30 years old, they're not going to be like they were when they were 22. Even the best, like Michael Vick, they faded after a while.
And you risk the injury too, because you're running backs have such a short life. And I was surprised you even called him a running quarterback because honestly, he's just a running back who throws the ball sometimes. And last year he proved that a little less, but he's still that player. And I think that if anything, you have to be worried about him getting hurt because obviously you have the worry about Patrick Mahomes, but if anything, he'll throw the ball away. Whereas Lamar doesn't do that as much. He just holds the ball and hopes for the best. And that's going to be something that happens because either a running quarterback just loses it after a while just because you run so much, as you were saying, or you have so much of a risk of injury is that they're not a long-term solution to anything.
And I think this kind of connects with Baltimore. My surprise, first off, is Pittsburgh, because I did not think they were going to be this good against the Ravens, the Browns and Joe Burrow. That's a tough division that they're in. And Ben Roethlisberger coming back from an injury. I feel like we tend to not give Roethlisberger the credit he deserves. He's not a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees out there as a quarterback, legendary status-wise. But if you think about that team 4 years ago, that he was able to navigate having Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Juju all on that team at one time and still win a playoff game. I know there's
one
talent
playoff
there.
game.
Yeah,
at the time, he had the best running back in the league and the best wide receiver in the league, and he couldn't go to the Super Bowl.
But that was a tough time too, because the Patriots. There's been teams in the past that have had the best running back, best wide receiver, and caught that dynasty. The Patriots. We'll get to them in a couple of minutes, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are still surprising me because, they're still winning games against teams that we thought, they're finally going to lose this time. But no. And even against Baltimore, they were able to. I know Baltimore got off to a good start, but Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger was able to lead them back. James Conner has been great. Claypool, the rookie receiver, paired with Smith-Schuster out on, the two receivers. And then the defense has been the best in football. And a year where a lot of the defenses you'd expect to do well, like San Francisco or the Chiefs, haven't been as good. The Steelers have been that one constant. My disappointment, and when we did our little PTI for broadcasting camp, you told me not to have faith in Cam Newton and the Patriots, and I'll give you the credit now because you were right. They're 2-5. Cam Newton, they have an opportunity to beat the Bills. Cam Newton fumbles the ball. I think now we're starting to realize Bill Belichick's an amazing coach, but you've got to give a lot of the credit to Tom Brady and a lot of the players around him, because now that Brady's gone, there's still some constants on that offense like Julian Edelman and James White, but Cam Newton just can't get them the ball. Stidham's not going to be any better if they start trying to start him. And the Patriots, these are not tough teams that they're losing to other than Kansas City. Buffalo's been leaky the last couple of weeks. San Francisco, a beaten up 49ers team, and then losing to Drew Lock and the Broncos 3 weeks in a row. Like, you can't do that. So I will give you the credit there.
Thank
you.
The
Patriots are not as good without Tom Brady.
They are not. And the thing is that they have Edelman, right? But if you can't throw the ball to Edelman, he doesn't do you any good. And he's been hurt, and I get they've had an injury situation. But even if you look at Brady, obviously Belichick's fantastic and Brady's fantastic. But in a sense, you need them together. Because if you see them apart, even Brady, he's had some success. Obviously, he's had some crazy games. But he's also had games where he's blown it at the last minute, or he's made a stupid decision, or just something goes wrong for him in Tampa Bay. And I think that also comes down to not having Belichick there, because the two of them work so in unison. And I think everyone knew it wasn't going to be the same Patriots team once he left. And sure, there was faith that Cam could have done something. But even if no one admitted it, everyone knew it wasn't going to be the same thing once Tom Brady left. There was no way it could have. And so, if anything, it doesn't surprise me as much, but it does surprise me that they're doing this badly. I didn't expect a loss to the Broncos from them, but,
I still think there's the opportunity that they could kind of start to get things together second half of the season and maybe get to, 7-8 wins, maybe up to that. But, it's
and get a bad
tough.
Draft pick. Yeah.
Yeah. But, they're still going to get 2 games against the Jets, including Monday night. So they can get some wins there. But, I gave you credit there, but I was right on one thing. Tom Brady with the Buccaneers is working.
You were right.
I was a little concerned, but since then they are 5-1. Giants gave them a run for their money Monday night, but the Buccaneers offense, just the number of weapons that Brady has to work with. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I know Godwin's been hurt, Evans has been hurt, but when they're in there, they've clearly been able to adapt to what Tom Brady brings. And I know he's not as much of a deep ball guy as Jameis Winston, but they've been able to adjust. Rob Gronkowski is starting to make a slight impact. You can't expect much from him. I think we were hyping him up too much after Jason Witten returned and was actually still really good. But Gronkowski's still doing some stuff. And now you got Antonio Brown coming in. We have no idea how that's going to work out. But, if this was 5 years ago, can you imagine what an all-star team this is? With LaShawn McCoy, Fournette, Brady, Mike Evans, Gronk, Antonio Brown all in the offense. But, hey, 5 years later, they're still a pretty good team, and they're definitely outplaying the rest of that division right now.
Absolutely. I mean, that team that you just described would not fit a salary cap in any sense. You could use this year's salary cap and 5 years ago, would not fit. But the thing is that, first of all, maybe this is just my thing, but because of the deep ball threat, I think Godwin and Evans have both accepted when they're playing, because they've both been injured on and off and everything, but when they're playing, they've accepted they're not going to get the same balls they got from Winston. And that was one of the things that I was worried about. And because they've accepted that, I think it's going better for the Bucs than I thought. And you were completely right on that. You said they're going to accept it. But me, I was like, no way. Like, have you seen the way Evans treats himself? Like, he has the biggest ego and whatever. But somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he managed to tame it a little bit. And I think the two of them have realized that they're not going to get the 70-yard pass. Not that they would have, but they're not that Jameis Winston would have hit them with the ball, but, he would have thrown an interception. But he's not going to try to throw the 70-yard pass. You're going to get, like, a 17-yard pass. But for them, it's been working. And it's nice to see a good offense roll. I know all the Brady supporters have been happy to see him succeed. And as long as he doesn't, like, continue his dynasty there, like, I genuinely don't care. He can play well. That's fine.
Well, 8 weeks down, 9 weeks to go. Probably a lot of COVID cases along the way, but the NFL's still rolling along, and it's going to be fun to follow. Zoe, it's been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming on today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's move into our interview now with Tim and Fisher to preview the NASCAR Championship. So this weekend is the NASCAR Championship at Phoenix, the new site for the championship, but it's going to be fun to break it all down. We got Tim here now, and we also got Fisher Giannotti. Fisher, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, great to be here, Eddie. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, Fisher, it's going to be weird not having Kevin Harvick in the finale. Before we talk about the 4 drivers who are there, let's talk about him not being in this finale despite having 9 wins. Do you think this is really the breaking point where the playoff system has to change?
Yeah, pretty much, because of the fact that a 9-win season, he doesn't even have a chance to compete for the championship. I think he at least deserves a chance, especially – I mean, the format's been pretty hit or miss for the past few seasons. And now I think this kind of just like shows that it's not the best. So I feel like maybe they could go back to an older format or maybe just try something new. But I definitely think that this is not good, that Harvick isn't in contention for this year's championship after a really good season.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Like, when we thought about from the beginning of the year, we saw him as one of the favorites with Denny Hamlin, and for him not to be there is surprising. But Tim, all 4 of these drivers have certainly earned it from how they've done in the postseason. Who do you think is carrying the most momentum into this finale? I know Chase Elliott won last week, but just building up, who do you think's got the edge right now?
Well, first off, I'm going to change what you just said there. 3 drivers earn their way into the Final Four. I don't care what anyone says. Denny Hamlin does not belong in the Final Four, nor does Kevin Harvick based upon their last round. I did a lot of thinking the past, about 20 minutes before I actually came here, Eddie, and I thought about it. NASCAR fans want to praise consistency. They want races that matter. Well, when you go back to the 2016 system in particular, you had no bonus points involved. You had the modern chase that everyone knows today. And on top of it, you had races essentially that had the matter of winning your in. However, my thought process is this, Eddie, and just hear this for a moment, okay? What if and I know you're a big advocate against winning your in. What if in the regular season we eliminate the winning your in? The playoffs are decided by the top 16 drivers as the modern system we have for today. You want your bonus points and your buys for success? Okay, carry it through the first 2 rounds until the round of 8. But once you get into the round of 8, everyone's at an even point. Why it goes to this point? Well, again, yes, Kevin Harvick has a 9-win season, but he's not in the Final Four. Why? Because he had a terrible round of 8. When you look at Denny Hamlin has 2 top 10s. He had an average finish of 13th position in the round of 8. And remember 2 weeks ago when I mentioned something in particular about Alex Bowman, who had 3 top 5s in the round of 8, not making it, not even remotely close. He was 20 points out. That is the problem with this chase system. You need to have consistency when it matters. And when you talk about tonight, or rather this weekend at Phoenix in particular, I don't think Denny Hamlin is a factor. He hasn't been a factor throughout the 10 races. I don't even count Talladega. I think he is going to be somewhere in the pack. I don't think he's going to be the worst of the four, but you wouldn't be going to Phoenix not expecting Penske to dominate. I mean, Keselowski, he wants number 2. He's been chasing that for a while. Logano, he's pretty good at Phoenix, and Chase Elliott is arguably the underdog. While he won last week, stats are against him. If I'm not mistaken, is it the last 3, maybe 4 champions to win the race before the finale haven't gone on to win the championship? I'm very worried because Chase Elliott seems to be a very statistic-driven driver. It may, unfortunately, go against his odds, meaning, again, it'll leave one of the 2 Penske drivers victorious in the victory lane, ultimately, at ISM or Phoenix.
And you mentioned Alex Bowman, and I know Fisher's a big Bowman fan here, but, you know, with this system, Bowman had the great start to the year, kind of faded into oblivion midway through the year, but then in the postseason, he's been on it, but because of the lack of playoff points, he just couldn't get in. He performed as well as really you could have asked him to, everything shy of a win in the round of 8, but just couldn't get through. But it's clear now that Hendrick Motorsports finally has some direction after these past couple of years just haven't been too good for the team. They've been in a rebuilding phase with guys like Gordon and Earnhardt Jr. and now Jimmy Johnson retiring. They're going to have their whole full arsenal now with Kyle Larson coming back next year. Do you think, Fisher, that Chase Elliott has a chance at getting his first title at Phoenix on Sunday?
It's pretty tough. Okay, so my heart says yes because I want a Hendrick car to win if possible because I like him, but he has some pretty tough competition. Hamlin's obviously going to be hungry as ever, trying to get his first ever championship. And then you've got 2 former champions that are pretty good at Phoenix. So it's going to be tough for him to compete. I mean, he has shown speed, almost, I think, winning in 2017. He was pretty good then. He's been fast at Phoenix most of his career. So, I mean, I think he has that as a positive. But, I mean, I don't know. He has a lot of really good talent that he's going against. So it's going to be really tough. And I mean, I think he's got a good team around him in Alan Gustafson, but I think it's going to take a lot of just luck. Well, not luck, but they're going to need some guys to not be 100% this weekend. But I think he definitely has a chance. Maybe not the best chance, but I think he could definitely go out there and maybe get the championship.
And you mentioned Alan Gustafson. To me, I kind of think that's a liability. Just think about he almost got screwed up by his own pit crew last week from winning that race, but fortunately the Jackman was able to get his foot back on the wall. And you think about just remembering the Coke 600 this year, there's been some questionable decisions from up in the box of that 9 team. And when you think about Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, Penske is so sound when it comes to their pit stops, and you've got great people up on top of the box like Paul Wolfe for Logano now. That kind of gives them the edge in that facet. But Tim, you talked about how you think this could be Penske's weekend with both Logano and Keselowski. They're both seeking a second championship. Logano, he won in the last round, and he's won at Phoenix this year, but Keselowski, I think, has had the better overall season. Who do you think has a better shot at getting that second cup on Sunday?
I'm going to say it's Brad Keselowski, and simply because of the fact that when you think about Phoenix, Keselowski's entire career has been very crisp and consistent. Sure, he hasn't had his fair share of wins, I guess you could say there, but he's found a way to make track position matter. And, for Logano, who has had some success at Phoenix, it's come in bunches. He's had some good races, and then he's had some really bad ones. And if I'm being honest, it's hard to believe this fact, but can you believe it was 8 years ago when Brad Keselowski won his first championship? It feels like really he won it yesterday. And it was, I believe, 3 years ago since Logano won his first title? Mm-hmm. So the way you look at it is that Keselowski's going to utilize this experience. He's come so close so many times. And obviously, yes, he does have that one title back when he was in the Blue Deuce. But now getting Ford a championship, getting Roger Penske essentially his third championship, It'll be huge, and I think he really does have the upper edge because, especially in intermediates this season, Keselowski's been the guy to watch. Not saying that Logano's been struggling by any means, but Keselowski's had the more consistent races from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree. Like Keselowski, this has been his best year in quite a while. He had a couple years that he wasn't as solid, and that was why Logano kind of became the new face of Penske. But Keselowski has sort of taken that back. But before we predict the Cup race, there are 3 championships this weekend, and it starts tonight in the Truck Series. 3 GMS trucks against Grant Enfinger. Fisher, who do you think's coming out on top?
Well, I mean, GMS definitely has the advantage with having 3 trucks. Could you remind me who the Final 4 is? I kind of forgot.
Yeah, it's Sheldon Creed, Moffitt, Zane Smith, and Enfinger.
Okay, so being a Moffitt fan, I would love Brett Moffitt. He hasn't had the best season. He did win either a week or 2 ago. So that's got me happy because I would love Moffitt to win, but I mean, Creed's been fast all season. Zane Smith's kind of gotten better down the stretch. And then Enfinger's been pretty good. He's been quiet, but pretty good. So, I mean, ultimately, I feel like it's definitely going to be a GMS truck. I don't feel like it's going to be Enfinger. He hasn't been the best. But, I mean, okay, so all three of the GMS trucks are really good. So, I mean, I feel like it could be any of them, and we don't really have stats to go off because Creed and Smith haven't really run much at Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I feel like that could hurt them. So I think that's why I'm going to go with Moffitt, just based off of that little bit more experience he has. He's more, he won the championship, I believe, in 2018. So I feel like ultimately experience will matter. And, I mean, I would love a Brett Moffitt championship just because he's probably my favorite truck driver. So, but I think he's definitely going to have the experience over Creed and Smith. And even Enfinger, he's been in there for a couple of years, but I still think that experience could definitely help him.
Yeah, I actually agree. Brett Moffitt, he's a former champion 2 years ago with the Tory, and GMS these last 2 years have had a lot of really good trucks, but haven't been able to close the deal. This year, I think with 3 of the 4 trucks in the Final 4, I mean, it's inevitable that I think one of them will end up going to victory lane. And Phoenix is a tough track, too. We've seen in the Truck Series, a lot of rookies have struggled there. There's been a lot of wrecks at Phoenix the last couple of years. So I think Moffitt having a lot of experience there will give him the ultimate edge in the truck championship. Tim, how about you?
I would like to go with Brett Moffitt, but at the same time, I feel like to an extent, if Brett Moffitt doesn't win this championship, there's a lot of pressure because if I'm being honest, he starts to have a career just like Matt Kraft did, as weird as that sounds. He's starting to become that truck regular, and I don't really see progression since he was thrown, unfortunately, into Michael Waltrip Racing many years back and has had his career almost spiral downhill before he's rebounded. So I think there is a lot of pressure for him to win. But again, you mentioned 3 GMS trucks, but I don't think a GMS truck wins. I think Grant Enfinger turns around, finds his success that he found at Martinsville, and comes home victorious. I mean, you think about it, back when he was in ARCA, Enfinger was the guy to watch for. He's had a slow progression right now through trucks, but he does have that talent. He just needs to continue to put consistent runs together. And usually when he wins, might I add, he tends to go back the following week and be a front runner. He may not win the race, but I wouldn't be surprised if he walks home champion tonight at Phoenix.
So let's talk a little about Xfinity now. Chase Briscoe has been the class of the field there, and he's the only one moving up to full-time after all these rookies the last couple of years. It's kind of weird that we've only got one of the Xfinity guys moving up to Cup. Him, Austin Cindric, Justin Haley, and the veteran Justin Allgaier will be the 4 competing for the title. Fisher, who do you think gets it done?
Okay, so that obviously I'm a Dale Jr. fan, so I'd love to go out there and say Allgaier. And I think he has a shot, especially with him being, I think, he won Phoenix a couple of years ago,
yes,
which was his last win. So, I mean, I think he'll definitely be a threat. I don't think it's going to be Justin Haley. He's not only really done extremely well at plate tracks. I mean, he's very good, but I don't think he'll go out there and compete at Phoenix. And then Cindric and Briscoe, I feel like it's – so Cindric, I don't really know Cindric or Briscoe's like stats at Phoenix, but I know that they're both very talented. But I think ultimately Briscoe's probably going to have the edge just because of – I mean, he's had a great season. He's going to want to have one final, win in the Xfinity Series before moving up to the 14 car. I mean, ultimately I would – if I had to like pick based off of my heart, I would say Allgaier. But based off of who I think will win, it's probably Chase Briscoe. I think Cindric and Allgaier are going to be close together the whole race. And then I think Haley's probably going to be in fourth. Not saying he's a bad driver or anything, but I don't think he's the best at Phoenix. So, I mean, I think it's probably Briscoe's championship to lose.
I'm going to go with Austin Cindric, actually, because in the Xfinity Series the last couple of years, it's tended that the best driver in the series has not come home with the championship. Tyler Reddick the last 2 years certainly was not the best. He was one of the best, but not the best in the series. I think Briscoe, he's been, very successful. He got lucky at both Texas and Kansas, avoiding the big wrecks in those races. But I think this is the point where Briscoe finally makes a mistake. I think Cindric has had a great year. He went on that stretch where he won, 5 out of 6 races back in July. And I think Cindric's going to come home champion. Like you said, Penske power, Tim. I think it's going to be seen in the Xfinity Series as well. What do you say?
Yeah, I do have to agree in regards that I could see Cindric being successful. When you look at it for Briscoe, this is a big learning point. And if I'm being honest, not everyone is William Byron who can come out and be successful, in their Xfinity season campaign after a dominant year and close out the championship in his system. Briscoe, it would be upsetting, don't get me wrong, if he doesn't come home victorious. But Penske has a big thing for this track in particular. They've proven over the years, as already what I mentioned in terms of the Cup side. I think Cindric has an upper edge. But also Fisher mentioned the 7 car. And, when I look at it too, for Justin Allgaier, I really feel like he has brought in the Elliott Sadler bad luck. He's come close so many times, but he just can't find a way to get it done. Fans want to see him win, don't get me wrong. He's already re-signed another deal for next year, and he's going to be coming back. But it's just like, when is enough going to be enough in terms of bad luck for him? Junior would love another individual championship in the Xfinity Series, but it's going to be really, really hard when you have 2 of those powerful Fords that have dominated the season while Allgaier's had a very mediocre year. And the same thing can be said about Haley, too. I mean, Haley's won a couple big races, don't get me wrong, but when it's all said and done, both Chevys have been nothing this year compared to those 2 Fords that have just found themselves in victory lane time after time after time again.
Yeah, and the ironic part, too, is that Briscoe and Cindric are the only 2 Fords in the entire Xfinity Series. I think Penske ran the 12 a couple times with Keselowski at the beginning of the year, but other than that, they've been the only 2 Fords of the 36 in the field, and they've been the 2 best cars all year. Before we pick our Cup champions, of course, at the end of Cup season, there is the farewells. Matt Kenseth is probably going to retire for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. Clint Boyer's heading to the broadcast booth. Chad Knaus is done as a crew chief. But, of course, the big story, Jimmie Johnson's final race, at least for now, as a full-time NASCAR driver. We wonder maybe he'll make some part-time starts down the line. But, Fisher, what are your expectations for Jimmie Johnson in his final race in the 48?
Okay, so I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that want me to say, oh, he'll go out there and get like a top 5 or something. Okay, let's be honest. He's probably going to be around like 15th all day. I want to be, he's gonna get a top 5 or something like that. No, he's probably just gonna run about like 15th, 16th. I just like at this point. I mean, it's cool. It's his final race. They completely messed up the final ride. Could have been a throwback to something, but no, they just made it silver. The designer and me's like hurting right now. But I mean, Stewart and Gordon had silver cars, so I guess it makes sense. But I mean, it's not really going to be as memorable as I feel like it should be because Jimmie Johnson is obviously one of the best drivers ever, and it's not going to be the most memorable final race. And I mean, it's definitely not going to be up there with Gordon's final race or something like that where, he had a chance at a championship in lead laps. I feel like Jimmy's probably just going to run around, 15, maybe get inside the top 10. Just at that point, I feel like he'll just like run those last few laps and just at that point soak it all in and just he's not going to really do much, but I feel like he'll definitely just enjoy the moment more so of trying to compete for a win.
Yeah, he's just trying to make the most of this final season. He couldn't get that win. He's not going to get it at Phoenix. So, but he's competed up there and he's had a good time doing it. And Hendrick Motorsports, like we said, is in a great position now with Bowman heading to the 48 and Kyle Larson now coming back to run the 5. So let's end it with this Cup Championship predictions. Fisher, why don't you go first?
Ooh, okay. So obviously Hamlin's been the most strong throughout the season. If Harvick was here, I would 100% say Harvick because he's dominated Phoenix. But we can't say Harvick now because the format's not the best. But so this kind of leaves me with it's basically going to – I want to say Elliott, but it's not really – he doesn't have the experience at Phoenix even though he showed speed. So I'm kind of stuck in this situation where, my heart says to pick Elliott, but I don't feel like that's really going to happen. So that kind of eliminates him. And then I feel like Keselowski could probably do it, but he hasn't been the best at Phoenix. He's been pretty good. He's good at most tracks, but he's not like you never really hear his name as a driver that competes at Phoenix. And then Hamlin, if it was Homestead for the finale, I would say he would have it because he won there earlier this year, I think. But now that it's at Phoenix, he hasn't been the strongest there. I don't really remember him doing that well for at least my lifetime. So I can't really predict him. So that basically just leaves Joey Logano. And I don't want it to be Joey Logano because I'm not a Joey Logano fan. But he's out of the 4, he's probably the best at Phoenix, in my opinion. I think he won there earlier this season. So he's definitely good at the track. I think he's won there at least multiple times, if not like a lot. So at this point, I feel like it's probably going to be Logano. I don't want it to be Joey Logano. I don't like Joey Logano. Like he's a good driver, but just it's probably going to be him just because of how well he is at Phoenix. I mean, who knows? It could be Hamlin, Keselowski, or Elliott, but I think my pick has to be Joey Logano just because of statistics, I guess.
Tim, how about you?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I could see this being a dominant Penske day, but notice I never said that they were going to necessarily walk away with the championship. In my opinion, while Brad Keselowski may be the favorite of that group, I'm going to go with the underdog of Chase Elliott. I said it, Eddie, if you remember, the first episode of Sports Speak. I said this could be the year for the 9. I'm going to stick with it. I think Chase Elliott can get it done. And I'll tell you what, who wouldn't want to see a double burnout with Chase Elliott and Jimmy Johnson side by side in his final career race, even if Jimmy can't win?
Yeah, Chase Elliott winning would certainly send the fans into a frenzy. Joey Logano would too, but that would be the whole opposite way because now all of a sudden the Twitter mob loves Kyle Busch and Joey Logano as the hated driver. But regardless, I don't think it's going to be either of them, and I don't think it's going to be Brad Keselowski either. We've already seen this year with the Los Angeles Dodgers in baseball, a team that just kept coming up short in the big moments, and they finally won the World Series. Well, I think the same thing's going to happen for Denny Hamlin. I know he hasn't been great at Phoenix in the past, but I think this is finally the moment. He's got some security next year. He's all excited about owning 23XI Racing with Michael Jordan. And I think this year's the year Denny Hamlin finally captures that elusive first title. He's come up short many times before, but I think this is going to be finally the time for that 11 team to celebrate in Phoenix. Fisher, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. Thanks, Tim. It was really fun. But yeah, thank you all.
Hold on, I just want to make sure I have yours right.
All right, so we're down to the final moments of the show. We've already talked some football, but let's get back at it with our picks. Me and Tim both went 2-1 last week because Tim got screwed by the Packers and I got screwed by the Bears against New Orleans. So let's talk about this. We're both 20-4. This is really getting exciting here, but let me start with my picks. First one, I know Lamar Jackson. I know I showed my doubts for Lamar Jackson earlier in this show, but I also showed some doubts for the Colts. And while the Colts got off to a good start, Phillip Rivers has done awful against teams that are mediocre. So a Ravens defense that's arguably second best in the NFL, I think this is going to be an easy win for the Baltimore Ravens. Second game, I've picked the Chiefs a few times. I'm going to pick them again simply because I could pick first this week. We alternate. I'm going to go with the Chiefs here over the Panthers. Panthers do get Christian McCaffrey back, which will be big, and I think it's going to be a lot closer than people would expect, but I think the Chiefs are going to win this one by about 10. I'd say, 34-24, because the Chiefs' defense has not been as good as past years, but Kansas City's going to pull this one out. Last one, the Cowboys. I don't even know who's starting at quarterback. Ben DiNucci's not beating an undefeated team if he's there. So Steelers all the way, even though the game's in Jerry World. Tim, how about you?
Well, I'm going to dip my toe in the water again. If you remember about 3 weeks ago, I picked the one and only win for the New York Giants. And I'm going to have the bold prediction to hopefully see a 2-0 record against Washington for yet another season. The Giants sit at 1-7. The NFC East is still a disaster, no matter if Ben DiNucci is the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and Carson Wentz is a turnover machine for the Philadelphia Eagles. I see the Giants coming out playing some very good offense and Joe Judge judging the team all the way to a victory against Washington. I honestly don't know what to expect from Washington's offense, if I'm being honest. It hasn't been well this season. While they have picked it up and played some good football, it's still not convincing. So to me, I feel like Giants are the better team, as weird as that sounds, and I think they can come home victorious. Now, I'm going to go with a pretty even game, in my opinion, surprisingly, at least record-wise going into this year. And I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans over the Chicago Bears. The Titans, Derrick Henry has been incredible running-wise, but this is arguably his biggest task all year long. That passing defense for Chicago has been electric, and it's going to be Derrick Henry's responsibility on the ground to try to run through Khalil Mack, as well as everyone on that defense. Obviously, I still have no faith in Nick Foles. I think he's still very mediocre this season. Expect Ryan Tannehill to at least lead this team to a bunch of points. I say it's going to be still a one-possession game, maybe decided by 7, but I have the Tennessee Titans over the Chicago Bears. And my final game, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks over the Buffalo Bills. I have to stick with my fantasy quarterback, even though he let me down against the Arizona Cardinals 2 weeks ago. Russell Wilson is just electric, and I'm very eager to see what he does against the Bills defense. It's crazy to think, too, Eddie, that this is the worst Bills defense we've seen in 5 seasons, and they're not even that bad. But when it's all said and done, it's very hard to shut down that explosive offense, and it seems like this is a team that's only getting better and better. And might I add, now the trade deadline week is done and over with, this is the team that we're seeing towards the finale for the rest of the year. A Super Bowl favorite potentially, of course, if that defense can all come together. But I think they beat Buffalo, who had a tough week last week, even though they beat the New England Patriots.
Yeah, Buffalo has been playing down to their opponents a bit this season, and the 2 games against the two good teams, the Chiefs and the Titans, they've gotten destroyed in both of those games. So Buffalo's still got some work to do. Titans pick, I'm a little iffy there because the Bears, I don't know. The Bears defense is very solid, but we'll see. We'll see. The Titans are coming off of a tough loss to Joe Burrow, but should be fun halfway through the season. We'll be back next week for another edition of Sports Speak. And thank you to Zoe Alter and Fisher Giannotti for joining us today. For Tim Moore, I'm Eddie Kalegi. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.